afternoon, everyone. And thank you for coming to this celebration. You would think after 29 years tomorrow as a member of Congress, I would learn to push the button on the microphone. With that said, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to this celebration of for our dear friend, Jen Wickre. I say celebration because that's what Jen wanted it to be. A gathering of friends, family, and loved ones to share memories of the happy times. And in true Jen fashion, she had a plan and got the ball rolling on this, which doesn't surprise any of you. For as long as I've known Jen, that's how she operated. She was never afraid to take charge. Correct, Mom and Dad? And was never one to back down from a challenge. Right, Mr. Mathis? I suspect that's been true of Jen since before she came to Washington. Jen hailed from Medford, Oregon, where she was raised along with her brother John by Jim and Janie Wickre. Jim and Janie are here with us today, and I'd like to say thank you for raising such an exceptional daughter. We are all so grateful to have known her. Jen went to college at Claremont McKenna, where she developed her love for public policy. And after an internship with former Representative Jerry Lewis, and some of you may not remember Jerry, but he was an old school appropriator from California, salt of the earth kind of guy. Jen was hooked, and she moved here after college to begin her career. She started out as Congressman Lewis's scheduler. And again, those of you in this room, and let me say this, Mom and Dad, scheduling is the most difficult role in a congressional office. You deal with members who can be kind of interesting and quirky sometimes. You deal with spouses. You deal with chiefs of staff. You deal with members. It says something about her ability, the way she worked up to serving as a senior legislative assistant. I know her time in that office was formative for Jen, not just because of what she learned about policy and legislating, but because she developed a close-knit community of friends there. She left the Hill briefly in 2012 to serve as the Associate Director of Government Relations for the University of California, San Francisco. But she came back after a few years because, and I'm quoting her directly now, she found the politics of academia less fulfilling than Capitol Hill. Can you imagine such a thing? Of course, back when she made that decision, politics here in Congress was arguably a bit simpler. Jen came back to the Hill in 2015 as a professional staffer on our Research and Technology Subcommittee. She worked here for more than 7 years, eventually becoming our Deputy Staff Director in 2020. I've had the privilege of knowing Jen for the last 4 years up close and personal, and she's been one of my most trusted advisors. She helped to write and pass legislation that will continue to benefit America for decades to come. Her work helped us address the challenges and opportunities in artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Her work is helping us expand STEM education so that our children across the country, in every zip code, have an opportunity to engage in science. And her work will help us strategically invest in the science of tomorrow so we can continue to develop innovative technologies to improve our lives. But more importantly than what she did is how she did it. She operated with integrity always. She represented the very best principles of public service. Jen wasn't deterred by challenges. She always sought solutions, finding ways to come to consensus so we could work together to pass bipartisan bills in the best interests of our country. And she did that work. As she did that work, she found time to mentor and advise younger staffers who sought to learn from her experiences. She even managed to keep her immediate boss, and he didn't know this, in line. Because, no offense, Mathis, I'm not sure who the boss really was. And that's no mean feat, my friends. Jen did all of this with grace and good humor. She brought that same grace to her illness this past year. Throughout her cancer treatments, she continued to work, to mentor people, and to share her friendship. Her commitment to service to her country and her loved ones is truly humbling. That's why, in addition to this service, we held a special order on the floor recently where members of Congress from both parties came to speak about Jen's impact. We've also had a flag flown over the Capitol in her honor, which we will be giving you, her dear parents, at the end of this service. I can only imagine how much Jen meant to you and your family. But I hope at the end of this service, you'll have some idea, just a little bit of an idea of how much she meant to all of us here in Washington. We will miss her deeply. We will remember her always. Many of you might not know this, but Jen sang with the congressional chorus for many years. While I never had the chance to hear her sing, if her laugh is any indication, she must have had a beautiful and loud voice. If you've been paying attention to the pictures of Jen displayed here today, you'll know that she loved Disney World. And you might catch a glimpse of her dressed as one of her political idols, Winston Churchill, for a school project. The Battle Hymn of the Republic was played at both Walt Disney's and Churchill's funerals. It's only fitting that some of Jen's friends from the Congressional Chorus are here today to sing this song for her. After all, we have some brief remarks, and then we'll invite all of you to stay in the memory of Jen and share your memories with us. As I said, Jen wanted this to be a celebration, so let's honor her wishes and celebrate. Let's absorb every bit of organic health food on both sides of the room. Let's tell all the tales that couldn't be told in front of her mother and father when she was with us. But I have to conclude with one final story. In the 1940s, my grandparents lived for a couple of years outside of Portland, Oregon, and my grandfather worked in Kaiser shipyards. You may not have known this, Jim or Janie, but Jen was also an amateur tour guide, because before the world fell apart with COVID, I spent some good times with Jen discussing if Linda and I and one of the granddaughters toured Oregon, where would we go? Well, we haven't been able to do that yet, but I have this map of Oregon with this great big circle and all of her recommended destinations. I look forward to having the opportunity to fulfill that trip. But before I turn to Heather, absolutely one last note. I am so personally appreciative of all you being here today. I said on the floor during special orders the other evening that Congress, the members of staff, the members themselves, all the folks who work in these buildings, we are a family. We should never forget that we're a family. We work together, we legislate together, we drink together, we discuss life together, we make decisions together. We are a family. And that's the spirit of this gathering today. Jim and Janie have suffered a loss even greater than ours, but we all lost a member of our family. Thank you.
And Jen would be so happy if you joined in, whether you're in tune or not. Please.
that was lovely, to say the least. My name's Josh Mathis. I'm the staff director here at the committee. I've been Jen's boss, but as Frank indicated, we all know how that works. I have some stuff prepared, but I'm not sure I'm going to get through it. So, but if I can just make it abundantly clear to Mr. and Mrs. Wickre how important Jen was to our staff and this committee, and quite frankly, this institution. She was a leader and a mentor and a friend, and the brains behind this operation she was the brains behind this operation. But she was such an incredible person, and such a delight to see every day in the office, and will be so terribly missed. And this institution, Congress, would work a lot better if there were a lot more Jens around. And I guess that's what I want everybody to know. Thank you for sharing Jen with us. I swear to God, I had some funny stories I wanted to tell, but I'll let others do that. But just know how important she was to us in this place. And I think I'll turn it over to Heather. I think we're going to let some other folks, if they want to hopefully make us laugh a little bit.
I mean, if you know it's important when Josh Mathis gets emotional. Before we open it up to Jen's friends to share some stories, I wanted to do a brief reading. This is called Death, If I Should Go. It's a poem by Joyce Grenfell. If I should die before the rest of you, break not a flower, nor inscribe a stone. Nor when I'm gone, speak in a Sunday voice, but be the usual selves that I have known. Weep if you must, parting is hell, but life goes on, so sing, swell. Kate, would you like to come share some thoughts and kick this off? Thank you. We kept some up here too.
I will say I don't know if I'll hold up any better than Josh did, but I will do my best. I'm Kate Johnson. I have worked with Jen on SST. Jen was part of the team that hired me. I've worked with her for the past 5 years. So a few weeks, sorry, I wrote something because I knew I'd start crying and rambling, so I'm gonna kind of read. Apologies, but a few weeks ago I was looking through old emails from when I was interviewing with SST, and I found an email I sent to Jen on October 30th, 2017, thanking her for taking the time to interview me. I knew she was busy. It was so formal, it's hard to believe that was only 5 years ago. Sorry. Excuse me. Over these last 5 years, Jen has become a massive part of my life. She was my colleague, my boss, my mentor, and most importantly, my friend. Whether I needed advice on work, outfits, travel, or just someone to share a joke or a story, because we all know Jen had the absolute best laugh in the entire world. She was always there. I haven't checked, but I bet I talked to Jen nearly every day over the past 5+ years. She used to laugh because every night, no matter when I left the office, I'd stop to tell her I was leaving. She once said, "Kate, you don't have to do that anymore." And I didn't say this to her, but I didn't stop because I never wanted to pass up the opportunity to visit with her, even if it was just for a minute at the end of the day. One thing that brought Jen and I and bonded us over the years, My writing is not very good in what I wrote. One thing that brought Jen and I together and we bonded over, in addition to our love of Royals and college football, was how close we are with our families. Janie, James, and John, she talked about you often and loved you fiercely. She loved to share stories of your cross-country trips from when she was a kid, your more recent cruises and trips to Hawaii, and your annual pilgrimages to Ducks games. She was especially thrilled to become the aunt to Benji. Jen has done more for me than I can put into words. Because of her, I have a job I love. Because of her and the team she built, I get to work with amazing, funny, kind people every day who care about the work that we do in this institution. I don't know what I'm going to do now that I don't have her to text or stop by her office, but I know she is here, and what she taught me will guide me for the rest of my life. I plan a bracelet that says WWJWD. What would Jen Wickre do? Janie and James, thank you so much for being here with us today so that we could celebrate the amazing friend and person Jen is to all of us. You've raised an amazing daughter who's impacted everyone in this room and more. Thank you for sharing her with us.
With that, is there anybody else who would like to come share a story? Great.
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Dillon, and I knew Jen for almost 20 years. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. He's so young. How could he have known Jen for 20 years? Well, in reality, Jen knew me when I had hair. Okay, well, more hair. In fact, as I was trying to hold on to those last few scraps of hair, it was Jen who one day told me, just shave it. Nobody cares. That was Jen in a nutshell. She was a colleague, a friend, an older sister, always ready to give her unbiased, unfiltered, and sometimes unwanted opinion. I was fortunate enough to spend a few minutes with Jen before she passed. Being the best awkward version of myself, I immediately asked Jen, how's it going? Without missing a beat, Jen shot back, well, obviously not great. Even until the very end, Jen was willing to needle me one last time. I met Jen in 2003, and I knew immediately her and I would be lifelong friends. Although I didn't have any idea where Medford, Oregon was, or why she had such a strong objection to pineapple, peanut butter, and papaya, the 3 Ps as we would call it, Jen would become a fixture in my and later my family's life. Jen and I grew up working for Jerry Lewis, a California politician that had a profound impact on both our careers and the careers of many people in this room. We both ended up spending about a decade working for Jerry, something unheard of today on Capitol Hill. Before turning her attention to the Science Committee, Jen specialized in healthcare policy. When Chairman Lewis thought Republicans should offer an alternative to President Obama's healthcare plan, guess who wrote it? Never one to shy away from a challenge, I remember Jen spent months working on legislation that would never become law. But again, that was Jen. Determined, persistent, and always willing to answer the call. She knew how to get things done. The Lewis years were filled with lots of laughs, and Jed had an infectious one. You always knew when she was in the room. As a group, we took trips to Maine, ate In-N-Out Burger together in California, a favorite of hers. I think I've seen the photos up here today. And went apple picking almost every year. Jen attended my wedding in California, our daughter's baptism in DC, and countless birthday parties. We attended the 2004 Republican convention together as an office. We sang our hearts out at a Neil Diamond concert, and Jen even convinced me that congressional chorus was cool. I have to admit the year they did the 80s covers was one of my favorites. And of course, there were her dogs, Wiley and Finn. She loved those dogs as much as she loved her ducks. Jen will be remembered for a lot of things. But to her, Lewis family, she will leave a huge void in our lives. The entire Wickre family, please know that you too are a part of our family, and we will continue to honor Jennifer's legacy through our work and dedication to this institution that she loved so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody else who wants to come share a story? Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Julia Gunther, and I'm a friend and former roommate of Jen's. First of all, leave it to Jen to make me have to come stand here in a House Congressional hearing room and speak. You know, as a lifelong federal employee of the executive branch, this is the last place you want to be on the Hill. So, I met Jen 20 years ago when we both first moved to DC after college and grad school. We met through a mutual friend who she went to college with, and 5 of us girls lived in this janky house in Columbia Heights. And we were like a block from the Columbia Heights Metro. I don't know that we told our parents where we were actually living, because I think they would probably been very scared that 5 girls from you know, the West Coast was moving to DC in the Columbia Heights. This was back in 2003. There was no Target. There was no any of that stuff at Columbia Heights. So we had some adventures there, if you will. Slowly, the 5 girls turned into 4, because they all went off to law school. And then it turned into 3, and then turned into 2, and it was just me and Jen. We were the only ones that, you know, didn't go off to law school to get student loans and, you know, all that fun stuff. So we moved to the Hill, and we lived in this basement apartment on 12th Street near Lincoln Park. And true to Jen's form, there were 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms in that basement apartment. And Jen, of course, being Jen, let me have the bigger room. She said, "You take the bigger room, you know, you can have the nicer room and the nicer bathroom." I'm like, "Great, awesome." But that's how Jen was, you know. As many of you guys have already mentioned, Jen's laugh was indicative of how she lived her life with her whole heart. Jen loved everyone. In the 20 years that I've known her, she has never spoken an unkind word about anybody. And she lived with me for 6 years, so that's, you know, saying a lot. You know, most of you know Jen is obviously a Republican. I'm a Californian who went to Berkeley, so guess which side of the aisle I stand on. But Jen never held that against me. She also never held it against me that I rooted for Cal. You know, we always watched football together, college football together, and we just had so many laughs and so much fun together, living together. My sisters, I have 3 sisters, and the 4 of us, my boyfriend at the time, and who's now my husband, and my brother-in-law, dragged Jen with us on an Alaskan cruise with us. And some of the pictures you see there, we went hiking on some glaciers, and it was just an amazing time. And Jen fit right in, as she always does. We called her, as Janie said, we called her one of our white sisters. I know that's not PC, but that's what she was. She was one of us. But we taught her, and we made her play mahjong on all the sea days. She grew to love it, and I just remember there was a musician on board who was, you know, like 85 years old, and just like everyone else on this Princess cruise to Alaska was also, you know, the average age was maybe 65, right? And then it was us. There was a musician on board, and every night he would play piano tunes, and they would have Name That Tune, and so we're like, oh, let's play Name That Tune. And people just underestimated us, because here we are, a bunch of 20-year-olds trying to play Name That Tune against, you know, a bunch of 60-year-olds. But we had a secret weapon. We had Jen. And so guess who won that bottle of champagne for Name That Tune? So I could go on and on about all the fun stories. Living with Jen, I mean, she was like a sister to me. She showed me the love. She showed me, she gave me advice. She gave me tough love when I wanted it and when I didn't need it, didn't want it. You know, she vetted the boyfriends and eventually my husband. You know, I could not marry somebody she wouldn't approve of. I knew that. And we were so honored to have Jen do a reading at our wedding because she is part of our family. I will definitely miss Jen tremendously. I mean, even though I moved to the burbs, no longer in the city, every time I think of her, every time I watch a movie or a TV show and I think of her, I always text her. And of course, she's already seen it, So I will truly, truly miss her a lot. She's meant and she means so much to me and to my family, all my sisters and my husband and even my kids. And so I, promised her before she passed that I would take care of, make sure that her parents are okay and her brother was okay and also her little nephew. And so thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for sharing Jen with me so many years and letting her be part of my family as well.
So there's nobody else I know of that has anything prepared to say. One of the things Jen and I spoke about is that if there was anything good about any of this, it's that she got to actually say goodbye to people. And a lot of people got to express their thoughts to her directly, which I know she appreciated quite a lot. We also have a memory book outside that will be going home with the Wickers. Most of us have addressed our messages in it right to Jen, though, because I think, as everybody said, we all want to keep talking to her. So if there's nobody else who would like to come up, then I really do encourage you to go outside to write a quick message or a long message in that book. We have plenty of food and drink, so please feel free to stick around. Is there anybody else who would like to come up before we? Please do come up, Mr. Wickre.
Let's hope I can make it through this, but I did want to talk about a couple of things about Jen. When she came to Washington from the Claremont McKenna semester in DC program, I was really excited about that. But I also had a certain fear, and that fear was I was a practicing lawyer in Medford, Oregon, small town lawyer. And I really wanted Jennifer to go to law school and come home and be a partner and eventually take over when I retired. I soon realized that that was never going to happen. She saw her roommates one by one going back to law school or going off to law school. And I brought her some magazines advertising or telling her about the various law schools. And she looked at me and she said, "Dad, I'm not doing that. I can't visualize myself sitting in an office in Medford, Oregon, or even for that matter in Portland, Oregon." She just didn't want to do that. And she did. She made the right choice. And I was so happy for what she did and coming back here. I mean, I've loved politics my whole life. And to see her be able to come back here and be successful at it, made me so proud of her. When she was sick last summer, I came back here the week that she was going to have the operation. I wanted to be here. Janie, her mother, had been here for weeks and weeks as she fought through her chemotherapy. But I definitely wanted to come back here and be here when she had her operation. So I got back here. And there was something else that I wanted to do when I got back here. And that is I had a really good friend from Coos Bay, Oregon, where I grew up, and from the University of Oregon when we went to college. He was basically my political mentor. Anyway, he had been in the Army the same time I had been, and he'd been to Vietnam in a fire base, and he had been wounded in a Viet Cong attack. He survived Vietnam and went on to a great career in journalism. And he died here in Washington, D.C. a few years ago and was buried at Arlington. He was my really best friend throughout my life. And I really wanted to go out to Arlington to say goodbye to him because I hadn't been able to come to his funeral. So I got here for Jen's operation, and I'd hoped to come over here, go over there to Arlington on Saturday. And Jen, even though she wasn't feeling up to it, she drove me to Arlington. And then she walked the 2-mile round trip from the parking lot to Jerry's grave. And I was able to say goodbye to him, and then we walked back to the car. It was a beautiful, sunny Saturday morning. Jennifer wasn't feeling good, but it was probably the best time I had with Jennifer up until she died. And so I just wanted to, just remembered how kind she was because she knew how important it was to me as well. Her mother and I are going to really miss her. We didn't get to see her all that much, but we always talked every Sunday evening on the phone. The family would get together by phone or Skype, and we will miss those get-togethers, and we'll miss the trips. Back when the kids were young, I planned all the vacations and made all the reservations, but Jen, being the scheduler that she had become, she took over that job. And she was always organizing trips. And she would get the hotel reservation, she'd get the motel, she would get the airline tickets, she'd get the game tickets if it was a game trip, and she'd get the rental car, and she had the whole thing planned out. And boy, I sure loved it because I didn't have to do anything. I just followed what she had in mind, and we just went, and she was always organizing trips, whether it was a cruise or a going to Hawaii. She loved Hawaii. And in fact, we are going to be going back to Hawaii for Christmas. And I sat down and had to make all the reservations this time because obviously Jen's not able to help me anymore. And I realized how hard and difficult that job was, particularly finding a nice place over Christmas. And so we're going to go back there, and we're going to take a part of Jen with us and leave it there in Hawaii when we go back to Hawaii. And we're going to the same place where she always would take us. And one final story, and I promise to shut up, is a few years ago, before the pandemic, in 2020, we were just a few months away from the pandemic. And Jen said, we need to go to the Rose Bowl. Oregon's playing Wisconsin, and we're going to go. So she made all the reservations, got the tickets, got us a nice hotel in downtown Los Angeles, took us out to a nice meal the night before New Year's Eve, and then we went to the Rose Bowl. It was a beautiful day in Pasadena, perfect. And what's great about Pasadena is the game starts in bright sunlight, and by the time the game's over, the lights have come on and the sun has gone down. And it was a great game. The Ducks came from behind to win the game against Wisconsin. I'm sorry to those Wisconsin fans out there. But the Wisconsin fans are very, very nice people. No, they really are. I mean, we with Jen, we've been to a lot of games, and some fans are not the nicest people in the world. But the people from Wisconsin were and are. And after the game, the Ducks had won. We wanted to celebrate. And so I wanted to go to my favorite restaurant in downtown, or in old Pasadena, and it's called a Buca di Beppo. And it's a great Italian restaurant. Jen hated it. She really hated it. You know, she was kind of a foodie, or at least I thought she was a foodie. She wanted to avoid, chain restaurants. She just didn't like chain restaurants. And I said, but you know what you're going to get, And so, but because she knew I wanted to go so bad, while we were waiting in line to get to the buses, she went ahead and got our reservations so that we could get in there, and we had a great meal and enjoyed it with some Wisconsin fans. And anyway, It was one of those days, a few months later, we were in the middle of the pandemic. And I think back on those really wonderful trip that she organized for us and how much fun she was at a game. I would sit next to her. Her brother was also there with us, and she just was, I can't think of anybody I would rather watch a game with than Jen. And I'm going to miss her. Thank you.
I don't think anyone can follow that. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Please enjoy the food and drink, and please keep sharing happy stories of Jen, because that's what she would want.